It is my pleasure to introduce Jack Ellenberg, who is the Vice President of Cargo Development for the South Carolina State Ports Authority. Normally, I really dislike having to read down through introductions like this, probably as much as you dislike having to listen to me do it. And so I look for things to kind of chop out so that it doesn't take so long. I couldn't do it here. Too much is on this thing that I think is really important and really, what he's done for the state of South Carolina. So let me kind of go through it. Jack's responsible for all cargo and new business development activities, including the location of new and expanded port user businesses in the state, as well as the Port Authority's cargo sales group. He was formerly Deputy Secretary for New Investment at the South Carolina Department of Commerce. He joined that post in 1996 and was responsible for leading the agency's efforts in new investment, both foreign and domestic, and overseeing the daily activities of the state offices in Europe and Asia. During his 15 years with the department, he was responsible for recruiting over $24 billion with a B, in new investment and over 72,000 jobs for the state of South Carolina. That in and of itself deserves a round of applause. He represented the state in working with numerous companies such as Amazon, BMW, Boeing, 3M, Eastman Chemical, Daimler, Google, Michelin, Honda, Fujifilm, ZF Group, and Robert Bosch. Run out of breath trying to read all those. He was named Southern Business and Development Magazine's Person of the Year for 2010 for his work in landing Boeing's new final assembly and delivery facility in South Carolina. In December 2010, Governor Sanford awarded Mr. Ellenberg the Order of the Palmetto, the state's highest civilian honor. He earned a bachelor's degree from Clemson and a master's degree also from Clemson, and he is a native of Anderson, so he is really coming home when he comes to the upstate to talk to us. Please welcome Jack Ellenberg.
Good afternoon. I'm going to see if I can figure this one out, so bear with me a second. It is a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I do thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come talk to you about, there we go, perfect. What is an exciting project for us at the Ports Authority and for the state of South Carolina and for the southeastern part of the United States. I want to begin by saying that economic development, you hear this a lot, but economic development truly is a team sport. It takes a lot of players to help bring a project to fruition. And the same can be said about the inland port. I know we're here to talk about that today. But we wouldn't be talking about the inland port if it wasn't for the support of not just my team at the Ports Authority, our elected officials in the General Assembly, Spartanburg County, but most importantly the folks here at City of Greer. We greatly appreciate all the effort that they put into making this a reality. We got a lot of work ahead of us. I'm going to go through it in a little bit. But what I wanted to do is start off by kind of giving you an idea of what's going on in our world. It's an exciting time to be in the port business. It's also a challenging time to be in the port business. So let me begin by just kind of telling you who we are. A lot of people know we're the Ports Authority. They're not really sure what that means, or they refer to us as the Port of Charleston. They must be Charleston people. Well, that's not the case. We were created to promote, develop, and facilitate waterborne commerce. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy thing. We do have our 5, soon-to-be 6 terminals in Charleston. We also have the Port of Georgetown under our control. But we exist to benefit the citizens of this state. Our enabling legislation mandates that we have a role in economic development, and we take that role very seriously. The fourth bullet I want to stress, we have to do so in a financially self-sustaining manner. That is a very nice way to say that we don't receive an appropriation from the General Assembly every year. What we do is we operate based on our revenue. So as we like to tell people, while I am a state employee, at the end of the day, we are a private business with a government shareholder, and that's the way we operate. To say we have an impact on the state, I think, would be an understatement. Right now, is about a $45 billion impact on the state of South Carolina annually. But again, our focus is winning business for the state. And it really boils down to 4 priorities. First and foremost, we have to grow our cargo base. We firmly believe that if you're not growing ahead of market, you're not growing. Our intent is to grow ahead of market and be the leader in the Southeast. In order to do that, we have to do infrastructure development. That includes new terminal construction. It also includes our nice project up here at Greer. Productivity is critical. This day and age, supply chain logistics are a matter of cost and time. We're very focused on our efficiency and our productivity. We're the most productive port in North America. We're very proud of that. Our challenge is to maintain that separation from our competition. And again, we go back to financial sustainability. But let me make sure everyone's clear. If we're not growing our cargo, the other three either don't happen or don't need to happen. And so we're very, very focused on growing our cargo base. So let's look at opportunities. Before I begin, that is a nice photo of the 9,000 TEU ship MSC Brussels. TEU is an industry standard that we use. It stands for 20-foot equivalent unit. That's a 20-foot box. Most containers you see on the road are 40-footers. If you look above the S, if you can make it out, it's a little blurry, but if you look above the S, those are 20-foot boxes right there. The balance of them are 40s. So a 9,000 TEU ship means 4,500 tractor trailers, to put it in layman's terms. That vessel also drives 48 feet. So what you don't see underwater is 48 feet of ship. That's the world we live in. That's all the discussion of deep water and so on and so forth. The point about this picture is this is not the biggest ship calling on Charleston. This is the second biggest ship. We have 5 9,600 TEU ships calling on Charleston every week. It's here today. The big ships are here today. So let's look at our opportunities. Panama Canal expansion, you all heard about it. Panama Canal is growing their lock system. They're growing their locks to take vessels this size. This ship cannot get through the Panama Canal today. It has to come to us via the Suez Canal. So we're looking at what will that Panama Canal expansion, what that impact will have on us. It all goes back to Harbor Deepening. I'm going to talk a little bit about more about that in a minute. It's about growing our exports. We have to be in a part of the country that still grows things for exports. We've got to grow our export base. We've got to grow our import base. But we've got to be aggressive in going after new diversification of cargo. So I get asked this question quite frequently. Why does it really matter? Why all this talk about big ships? Well, containerization is about economy of scale. This is a nice rendering of an 18,000 TEU ship, twice the size of the Brussels that you saw off the point of Sullivan's Island. This ship's in service today, coming from Asia to the West Coast. We'll never see this ship on the East Coast, but what we will see is as more of these vessels enter service, it's a domino effect. It's a displacement of assets. And so what we will see, and what every carrier tells us, is the workhorse will be 8,000 and 9,000 TEU ships calling on the East Coast. We've been told by MSC, who is the largest carrier calling on Charleston, that they have a 14,000 TEU ship that can fit through the new locks of the canal, and it will call on Charleston. And there are only 3 ports on the East Coast that vessel can get into: Charleston, Norfolk, and New York. It's coming, and we've got to be ready for it. So this kind of brings it home. So by the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, which is about the time the locks reopened for the Panama Canal, there'll be 1,200 ships plying the oceans with capacity of 5 million TEUs. Those are considered Panamax ships, meaning they can fit through the canal today. But you look at the 1,200 that can't fit through the canal today, the post-Panamax ships. They'll be double the capacity. So if you're going to put your product, BMW, to ship it anywhere in the world, you're looking to get on one of the biggest ships. That's your strength, which means we have to be in a position to handle it. The other thing I'd point out is our growth for import opportunities and export. If you look at the population in the Southeast, between now and 2030, we're projected to grow at 46%. 4 fastest growing states in the Southeast: North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. That's consumers. That's nothing but a consumer base. We've got to get product to that consumer base. And again, I mentioned we're one of the few parts of the country that we still make things, grow things for export. Whether they be BMWs or natural grains or soybeans, we're exporting to the global market. So let's talk about the need for 50 feet. That's a phrase you hear frequently. The Southeast needs a 50-foot port. Well, I'll go back to that picture I showed you. The MSC Brussels, when it comes in fully loaded, drives 48 feet of water. It means they're 48 feet under the water when that vessel comes in. We can bring that vessel in on top. we're tidally restricted. When that vessel comes into Charleston on high tide, fully loaded, there's 2 foot of clearance between the bottom of the keel and the bottom of the harbor. That much. Think about that. Vessel that big coming up with only that much room. So if you look at the East Coast, the 4 you see in green are authorized to be at 50 feet. Doesn't mean they're at 50 feet today, it means they're authorized by the U.S. Corps of Engineers to get there. New York and New Jersey will always be a major port that we need to have service going to. There are 45 million people in the tri-state area around New York. Very much a critical port for the East Coast. Well, New York and New Jersey has another problem. They got a bridge in the way. They don't have a harbor depth. They have an air draft issue. The ships can't get under the Bayonne Bridge. So while we're talking about needing to dredge, they're talking about needing to raise a bridge. That's about $1.5 billion project that they're undertaking. Baltimore is a river port. They have their own challenges as a river port, but they're authorized to be 50 feet. Norfolk's going to get whatever Norfolk needs because of the military. And we want that for obvious reasons. But we really don't compete with them. What we compete with is the Southeast. Now you have Miami sitting here. Miami is a cruise terminal. It will always be a cruise terminal. However, Miami believes that if someone is going to be at 50 feet to serve that growing population of the Southeast, it might as well be them. But in reality, as our friends at BMW will tell you, inland transportation is the major cost on logistics, not ocean freight, inland transportation. We respectfully disagree with their thesis that they can do that. We think it costs too much money to run product from Miami to the rest of the Southeast. So really you're looking at Jacksonville to Wilmington, Savannah, and Charleston. We're the deepest today. We have the capability of being the deepest tomorrow. Regardless of that situation, we need, because of what's going on in the Southeast, one of us to be 50 feet. Charleston happens to be the one that can get there from a practical standpoint, from a physical standpoint, and from an environmental standpoint. And so we believe at the end of the day, we will be 50 feet. We believe we'll be 50 feet sooner than later. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So the second question I get all the time is, why are we behind Savannah? We are not behind Savannah. I assure you, we are not behind Savannah. In fact, we're well ahead of Savannah. And I'll explain that. This is a nice chart, and I apologize if you can't see it. But basically, the yellow represents Panamax dredging. That means dredging that's done to handle the Panamax ships, the ones that can fit through the canal today. The green represents dredging for post-Panamax. So we started our first Panamax expansion to take the Port of Charleston to mean low water 45 feet in 1990. We finished that dredge in 2004, a nice 14-year-long project. It doesn't take 14 years to dredge a harbor. It takes that long to study dredging a harbor. Savannah began theirs back in about 1996. They have yet to dredge their river. 16 years or so later, they are still in the process, 14 years later, still in the process of trying, and we don't know if they'll ever get there because they have lawsuits piled up against them from the environmental groups. We started technically back in 2005, but really in earnest in 2009, our post-Panamax to take us into a depth of greater than 50 feet, and we believe that we will have our harbor deepened by 2018, 50 feet plus. That means 50 feet mean low water. Those 48-foot drafting vessels can come in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, unrestricted. That's what we want. That's our goal. The reason we can speed it up is the Corps of Engineers has agreed. From one standpoint, the fact that we finished our first dredge in 2004, not a lot has changed since 2004 in regards to our harbor. And so they agreed to speed up the study. But also because of the leadership at the state and the General Assembly to set aside the entire harbor deepening money today. We have sitting in the bank the $300 million it is going to cost to dredge our harbor today. Why? It was done because A, we do have to have a state match, but B, in anticipation that the federal government may not have a means to fund a harbor deepening, and this infrastructure is absolutely critical. So, to those members of the General Assembly that are here today, thank you very much for your support. When you're out in the community, if you run into them, thank them. This is critical for the companies that exist in South Carolina and beyond. So let's talk about Panama Canal. We get, what does this mean? Will we see cargo diverted as a result of that expansion? Well, there's two schools of thought. Let's start with the con. This is why people will tell you it's not going to happen. Well, they're going to tell you that there's no infrastructure needs on the West Coast. Well, that's slightly true. West Coast railroads won't give up their cargo. That's probably true. If the diversion was going to happen, it's already happened. West Coast ports will price aggressively. I mentioned the Bayonne Bridge in New York. Transit times are too slow, and we have a little East Coast labor uncertainty right now at the end of the year. From a pro standpoint, this is what people will say is why it's going to happen. 70% of the U.S. population is east of the Mississippi. You got to serve that population. We've been talking about the exports a little bit. We're seeing an increase in the growth of exports, and there's a reason for that. There's two reasons for that. One, the products that are made or grown east of the Mississippi, but two, when a container is dropped off in LA, it's put on a train, it's sent to the East Coast. That container stays on the East Coast. It doesn't go back to the West Coast. So all the equipment ends up on the East Coast. So we have all the equipment. The big ships, there are too many of the big ships to not deploy them on these long routes. Logistics is a cost game. You know, carriers are looking at all ways to do the cost, and we have some rail negotiations that are ongoing. We firmly believe it's going to happen, and so we're investing in that. We're investing heavily in that, to the tune of $2 billion between now and 2020. That's $2 billion with a B in infrastructure to anticipate that growth of cargo. 1.3 billion of it is coming directly from us. That's our revenue based. We're going to the bond market. We're floating bonds. We're investing heavily in the infrastructure. I point out the middle picture. That's a rendering of our new terminal at the Navy base. That'll add 50% to our capacity. That's the bulk of our 1.3 billion. Also within that 1.3 billion is our project up here at Greer. And I'll come back to that in just a second. The state's also investing 500 to 700 million as well. 300 of that's in the harbor deepening. But we also have infrastructure such as the widening of 526 and increased rail capacity down in Charleston that they're working on. Bottom line is leadership is behind it, but to say the stakes are high would be an understatement. Whenever you're floating $2 billion in anticipation, you better deliver. And that's our challenge as a port. And I'm pleased to say we are making progress. If you look at January to July this year versus the exact same period of time last year, we grew at 9.9%. Fastest growing port in the country, Port of Charleston. We're aggressively going after cargo, and that's above market, by the way. We're recapturing cargo that we lost, and we're gaining new cargo. We're also adding new services. This is a snapshot. I don't want to go through all the acronyms because that's lingo for the industry. I don't necessarily know them all as well. But these are 4 new service streams that we've added in the last 6 months. This is critical because ships go where there's cargo. This means we are driving cargo to Charleston. I'm especially proud of the Oceana service. That is an Australia service. We used to have that years ago. We lost it to Savannah. We won it back. It left Savannah 2 weeks ago, made its first call on Charleston, South Carolina. Huge for Michelin. Michelin off-road tires, the big oversized tires you see, half of them go to Australia. Now we don't have to watch them go past the Port of Charleston on the way to Savannah. They're stopping at us. And that's critical for future opportunities. This is a snapshot of the last 2 years. These are projects statewide that have made investments in growth, new expansions, or new operations that have a port component to them. These companies use the Port of Charleston every single day, and we're happy that they continue to grow. So let's talk a little bit about the inland port. This is an exciting project for us. We believe it's a way to further reach out to what is our core sector, if you will, of opportunity, and that's the I-85 corridor. When you look at what is our strength as a port, you take a wedge off of Charleston through Georgia, up through North Carolina, and everything in that pie shape is where we should be the best, and this helps us in that process. So this is going to create an opportunity for us to reach out to those companies that are looking to import, but also looking to export, and feed that product into this area of the state via rail. We'll size it to handle, when fully operational, 80,000 containers a year. I know that sounds like a lot. We handle 1.3 million a day down in Charleston. But those 80,000 are critical for us getting those trucks off the road, getting that product to its customer in an efficient and a timely manner. This will absolutely separate us from our competition, not just as a port, but as a state when it comes to recruitment of new industries. So this is what makes this project so exciting. We're on a fast time frame. We hope this time next year we're standing here celebrating the ribbon cutting on our facility. We need to do that. We need to move quickly. It's not a complicated project. at the end of the day, but it's one that is necessary for growth. To kind of put it in perspective, we sit 212 miles from the Port of Charleston. Where it makes sense to shift from truck to rail, 200 miles. We're right on the edge of where it makes economic sense. We're fortunate that we have this opportunity in South Carolina, and we want to take advantage of it to the betterment of the state. Our skin in the game, we've got $25 million dedicated towards this project. Norfolk Southern, as our partner, has an additional $7 to $7.5 million dedicated to the project. A nice project for this community, a very important project for us. So why does it matter, or why now? Anyone who's been here for quite a long time knows that we bought that property back in 1982. We didn't know why we bought it in 82, we just knew we needed something in the future in the inland, hoping that this day would come. Well, it did take 30 years, but we're glad we're here. But there's a lot of reasons it makes sense today. The federal government is messing, the federal government is looking at redoing or enhancing the regulations governing hours of service for truckers. That's a nice way to say they're telling a trucker how long that trucker can be in a truck on a given day. Absolutely important, but what it does is as they shrink that day, it adversely impacts supply chain and logistics for companies. Companies that are absolutely dependent upon truck traffic, it will impact their ability to get their raw material in and their finished good out. So that's one of the reasons. Trucker availability. People aren't aggressively seeking the trucking industry as a career anymore. They're leaving it. They're leaving it. And so there are fewer truckers on the road. Again, something that adversely impacts manufacturing and distribution. Cost of fuel continues to go up. I saw a report this morning that California is over $5 a gallon. That impacts truckers, that impacts the cost of a company doing business. But I mentioned the variable equipment cost, such as the containers and so forth. You got a reliability issue. The rail runs on a schedule, believe it or not. It runs on a schedule. Far more reliable than truckers. You also have the carbon footprint. Our friends at BMW are very concerned about their appearance as a green company. This is a positive impact on that. And of course, it's about where they locate. This is the intermodal run today. Most people don't realize we have one. It starts in Charleston at the 7 Mile Yard. It goes up through Columbia, past through Greer, down to Atlanta. That's an existing intermodal train. We're going to tap on to the back of that train. We're not adding a train to service. We're adding onto a train that's in its service today. Timing's perfect. Speaking of services. And of course, here's our location. You see the box around where we own our property. You see the proximity to BMW. BMW is our launch customer. You see the proximity to GSP, and of course we see the proximity to Greer. We're working very closely with our partners on this. Our partners being Norfolk Southern, the City of Greer, Spartanburg County, BMW, GSP, and South Carolina Department of Transportation. And one thing I want to point out that we've made very clear from the beginning is we want to ensure that this facility is not just viable, not just creating opportunities, but we don't want it to be a burden on the community. And what I mean by that is we're working very closely with the Department of Transportation to make sure trucks do not find their way downtown. So we are absolutely working with them from a routing standpoint, so those trucks will be headed out of Greer, away from Greer, to the interstate in the most efficient manner possible to serve the customers. So what opportunities does this mean? If you look at this, this is kind of just a snapshot with Greer in the middle, the center of the universe. If you go in concentric rings out, and I mean that in sincerity, you hit a significant population. 500 miles from Greer, South Carolina, you reach 94 million people. That's 94 million consumers. It's also export markets. That's why we think Greer has a tremendous opportunity from a job creation, job growth, economic development standpoint. And it's not, by the way, unrealistic to think that product that comes in via rail to Greer doesn't go out via truck to that 94 million population. That's not unrealistic to think. If you look at what goes across our docks every day, we serve 26 states. So again, not unrealistic. We talk a lot about containers. We're not all about containers. We do handle break bulk. Obviously, we see our friends at BMW. We handle 200,000 BMWs last year. We hope to handle more this year and more next year. We're handling GE gas turbines coming out of Greenville, South Carolina. We're handling Siemens gas turbines coming out of Charlotte. A lot of opportunity beyond just containers. We also have a little cruise business on the side. But I'll point out that 80% of our business is tied to containers. Very, very important to what we do. And so when we talk to customers, we tell them it's real simple. When you're looking at supply chain, you're looking at logistics, it's all about lowering risk, increasing performance, and lowering cost. We firmly believe we're a leader in that market. We believe Greer will be an extension of that and help us to continue to lead the country when it comes to ports. So I'll leave you with a few final thoughts. And that is, one, starts and stops with volume. If we don't have the volume going through Charleston, we don't need to make the investment in Greer. We don't need to make the investment in our new terminal. We're investing because we're aggressively going after new cargo. There's not a company that I meet today where logistics isn't one of their top 2 or 3 key criteria on location decisions. How do I get my raw material in? How do I get my finished goods out? This will aid in that recruitment process. I mentioned the big ships. It's all about economy of scales. The big ships aren't a thing of the future. They're here today. We had 156 post-Panamax ships call on Charleston in 2011. We are on record, on a pace to hit 250 this year. 75% of those are too big to get in any other port in the Southeast. They're calling on Charleston because they can. And so as a result, we firmly believe as these ships get bigger, and by the way, that's in a down economy. When we have a robust economy, we're going to see a funneling effect going through Charleston, South Carolina. That is a huge opportunity for the state, for the Southeast as a whole. And again, we mentioned that we believe that at least one Southeastern port needs to be all tied post-Panamax capability, and we believe that is Charleston. At the end of the day, I would tell you from an economic development standpoint, this opportunity in Greer creates huge opportunities for growth. Huge opportunities for companies looking to be located near it, looking for companies looking to locate from a distribution standpoint, serve that population base. It will aid our friends at BMW, GE, ZF, Michelin, Eastman Chemical that use the Port of Charleston today, and to move their cargo in and out very efficiently and very timely manner. We're excited about it. We appreciate everyone's support. I'm up here now. This is my second home. I'm up here weekly. I'm happy to help and answer any questions at any time. We want to make sure that this process is truly a partnership. And so please ask me questions. The mayor knows how to find me. Mr. Driggers knows how to find me. Reno knows how to find me. Please let me know. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We're excited. And again, thank you for letting me be here today to talk about this project, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Is the inlandport foreign trade zone?
It will be. It will be. The inland port we will own it. We will operate it. It will be seamless to our operations as if we had the terminal down in Charleston. It will be a foreign trade zone for those companies that need it. Yes. Yes, sir.
You have a business that's looking to export and just need help identifying risk and contacts. Where would you point them?
You're welcome to talk to my team. We'll be happy to set up a meeting and talk to you about the process of export, what it means, introductions to customs, anything you need. We'll be happy to do that. Yes, sir.
What are the hurdles to getting this project completed?
I've got 11 months to get it done. That's the biggest hurdle. We're on a fast time frame. You know, it's a process, but we have a lot of the right players on the team, all the right players on the team, I should say, with everyone focused on the same goal, and that's operational by September 1, 2013. It is, on the surface, it doesn't appear to be an overly complicated process, but we want to make sure it's done right. And so we're making sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. We're still in the early steps. We're still in the design phase. Working very closely with our partners to make sure that once we begin to construct, that we're all in agreement of what we're constructing. So the biggest enemy is time and the unknown, but time. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Is Norfolk the only train that will haul those containers, or is there
there a plan to have a duplicate or redundant carrier?
As y'all know from living here, CSX runs through the neighborhood as well, through the community as well. The CSX line is about 50 feet from the Norfolk Southern line at our terminal. We did not, by design, reach out to CSX because that line goes to Savannah. And so it really doesn't help us to be able to bring boxes in from a trucking standpoint, put them on a CSX train and send them to Savannah. I'm not sure I'd have a job that much longer if I was subsidizing Savannah. So, but that's why. That's why. And the other question, kind of a subset of that, is what about the intermodal yard that Norfolk Southern's building in Charlotte, between the runways of Charlotte Douglas? That's complementary to this. It's a different intermodal train. That train also comes out of Charleston. So we're going to see opportunity to feed product into the Charlotte region straight out of Charleston, and this region going everywhere else. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
So is Savannah on target to be finished around the same time frame? Is that why your goal is to be finished by September 2014? As you said, you were ahead of Savannah.
On our dredging, we're slated to be deep by 2018. Savannah, the Corps of Engineers has limited Savannah's depth to 47 feet. 47 feet only. So they can't, even at their deepest, will not be able to get a fully loaded post-Panamax ship in when it drafts 48 feet. So they're still going to be limited. There's still going to be ships that won't stop in Savannah because they don't have the depth, even after they go deep. So my thesis to you, or my argument to you would be, Charleston today, even though we're tightly restricted, has greater capabilities for handling the biggest ships than Savannah will when they are dredged. The question is, will they get dredged? That's about an $850 million project. About $250 million of it is tied up in environmental mitigation. Ours is a $300 million project with zero environmental mitigation. So, you know, they're not going to go away by any means. They've done a great job as a port. They will always have a role. We just believe at the end of the day, we will be 50 feet, and the biggest ships calling on the East Coast will call on Charleston, South Carolina. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. The transit time, well, the actual length of transport will be a little bit longer because of the speed of the train that comes out of Charleston. It's about, well, I guess about a 4-hour run, Bunny, from Charleston via truck today, but that doesn't include traffic. That doesn't include other issues. The train will leave Charleston in the evening. It'll be here in the morning unloading. What it'll do is it'll pull into our terminal. We'll drop off the back end. It'll keep going on its way to Atlanta. We'll service that part of the train, restack for export. The train comes back through, tacks on, and goes back down to Charleston. So while it may take a little bit longer, it's an overnight service. It's predictable, and that's what separates it. Someone else? Yes, sir.
Who's our largest export importer present?
It depends on how you define it. If you define it by value, our representative is sitting here in the front of the room, BMW, from an export standpoint from value.
We are the state's largest exporter, and this is the second year we've been the largest, and that's by ranked not by us, but by National Association of Foreign Trade Zones.
And the thing I would actually point out, because you're not bragging on BMW enough, Bunny, is that they're not just the largest exporter for the state of South Carolina, they're the largest exporters of vehicles in the United States. So we're very proud that they're in our backyard, and we're very proud they're a customer of ours. So it depends. And then likewise on the inbound, we handle about 20,000 containers, I believe, for BMW. Adidas down the road in Spartanburg, we handle 25,000 containers for them. It depends on how you run the numbers, to be honest with you. I'm not trying to be evasive, but you can do value, you can do volume, you've got break bulk, you've got containerization. Suffice to say, we got some major players in South Carolina using Port of Charleston and in the Southeast. You know, one of the larger non-South Carolina residents, if you will, is Eastman Chemical out of Kingsport, Tennessee. Is a big user of the Port of Charleston. Ellenberg Cotton, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of opportunity. Yes, sir.
Any appreciable difference on traffic on I-26 as a result of this?
We hope so. We hope so. When you think about a facility size for 80,000 containers, those are 80,000 containers that are moving up and back on a train that otherwise would be moving back and forth on a tractor trailer. And so we do think it will have a visible impact, maybe not, you know, to the untrained eye, but to you and I who are used to traveling that road. We may see less trucks on the road. And certainly from a wear and tear on the infrastructure, it will absolutely have an impact. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
To achieve the September 1 recutting, we need to break ground.
That is yet to be finalized, the exact window. We do have permits we have to go through, filing of permits, both land disturbance. We have some wetlands delineation has to be done to see if we do have an impact on the wetlands, for example. It's a nice way to say we don't know yet. As I said, we're still in the early part of the design. Hopefully we'll know that in pretty short order. I'd like to think no later than spring. So, anyone else? Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.